This guide was put together to help parents joining our troop, either from Cub Scouts or other troops, or with boys that have just decided to join Boy Scouts, so that you can understand how our troop works and how scouting works in general. We're going to talk about scouting, a little bit more about 460's mission, what we mean by boy-led troop, how the adults get involved, an example of a typical camping weekend, and a few more details about what the troop provides and those all-important rank and merit badges. Let's start with scouting. Scouting has been around for over 100 years, and its focus and dedication has been to the development of scouts. We want young men to become leaders of tomorrow, and so we provide a safe environment where they can fail, because usually failure leads to the best learning. Troop 460 has a very clear mission statement. We want to create that environment, but also an environment that's safe and free from any bullying or emotional or physical harm. So we, as adults, take the Scout Oath and Law to be the same for us as it does to Scouts. So we refuse to tolerate any kind of name-calling, put-downs, or discrimination. We always talk to the boys about how we accept them for who they are and how happy we are that they're part of the troop. And we focus on setting up an environment that's fun, creative, and a great place for them to learn and grow. So how are Boy Scouts different than Cub Scouts? Not only are they older, but Boy Scouts are really about the boy. In Cub Scouting, we do a lot with the family, but now it's about the boys, and the boys running the troop and making decisions for themselves. As adults, we facilitate. We provide those things that a young man cannot, and we make sure that everything's done under BSA regulations. So the boys will learn how to cook, clean, plan, and decide. It's boy run, meaning the boys make the decisions, and the adults make it happen. Why? Ultimately, this is leadership training for the boys. Where else are they going to have the experience of managing 30 to 45 other scouts or other individuals, unless they get into a management role in their later life? So this is their pre-management training, if you will. It also teaches them a great set of skills for the outdoors and develops confidence in them. Running meetings can help them understand that it's not so easy, but so rewarding. And, as we've said before, it is a great foundation for their growth into the leaders of tomorrow. So how do they run the troop? Well, there's a Patrol Leaders Council, and it's made up of all the leaders in the troop, from the senior patrol leader, who is really the boss, to the assistant patrol leaders, and down through the different patrol leaders and assistant patrol leaders and our troop guides. So, if they're the leaders, who decides the members of that PLC? Well, the boys do. We hold elections twice a year, and every boy that wants to have that leadership role, that SPL, that is so coveted, must write an essay, and they must present it in front of the troop, and then the troop votes for who they feel should lead. The SPL then decides who his assistants are, and each patrol will go ahead and vote for their leader. And as the night goes on, because we usually do this during a troop meeting, we fill out all the different leadership positions. Now the PLC is formed, and they decide how a patrol is structured. So many times you'll hear boys talking about how one boy moved from one patrol to another and they don't quite understand. Well, you can tell them, well, the Patrol Leadership Council decided there must have been something going on that they felt it was time. But always, always recognize that moving from one patrol to another, or a decision of structure in the troop, is the boy's decision. And it is not a recognition of rank or advancement. It is simply a decision of what is best for the troop and that patrol. So if the boys are leading, what do the adults do? We have two basic groups, Scoutmasters and committee members. We also have parents, but for this discussion and conversation, let's just stick to these two groups. Scoutmaster. There's one Scoutmaster and many Scoutmasters. That one Scoutmaster is focused on the program, and with his assistants, makes sure that the boys are getting all that they can out of the program. But if the Scoutmaster is focused on the boys in that program, who is taking care of things like fundraising, who's taking care of equipment, reservations? Committee members. We have chairs within the committee that manage all these different functions, and they're critical and key to the creation and advancement of the troop. One other thing to note, Scoutmasters are always going to be focused on the boy, and the Scoutmaster is ultimately responsible for all that goes on in an outing. So, who makes sure these adults are trained? We don't want our boys running around with people who don't know what they're doing. Well, BSA does. All the adults must participate in youth protection. Anyone who is going to be involved with the program, involved with the boys, have contact with the boys, must take youth protection, whether they were scoutmaster or committee member or just an adult from the troop, a parent. You must have youth protection. If you want to be a scoutmaster or an assistant scoutmaster, then you must take scoutmaster training. And there are additional courses that make sure you know what's going on and to keep those boys safe. So BSA, again, make sure that we're all. So if the scoutmasters and committee members are doing all this, what do the parents do? Well, as a parent myself, I make sure my son goes to every meeting. I support him and participate in the committee to understand what's happening and what's going on. I help set up some of the tasks, and maybe sometimes I'll teach a merit badge. In fact, I do that quite. And that's what I encourage you to get involved in. Ask questions, make sure that you know what's happening, but then also get involved by teaching. Maybe you want to become an assistant scoutmaster, or maybe just a committee member. Ask. The scoutmaster is always willing to answer your questions. And remember, the boys are in charge of any issues that may come up in the troop. But ultimately, those issues will come up to the scoutmaster. And if the scoutmaster feels that you need to be involved as a parent, they will reach out to you and make sure that you know what's going on. Talking about communication, how do you stay informed as a parent? Well, already talked about the meetings and bringing your boy. Well, why don't you come along too? A lot goes on in those meetings, and you can hear announcements at the beginning and at the end of every single meeting. There's also the monthly committee meetings, where we get together to talk about the administrative aspects of the troop. How are we doing with fundraising? How are we doing with advancements? And so much more. You can also just follow us on Twitter and Facebook. On our website, troop460.org, we actually have links to both Twitter and Facebook, and we provide a Twitter feed. So in case you're not a Twitter follower, you'll at least know what's going on. We use that link to make sure that you know what's happening on a campout. We may not always be able to tell you on a day-by-day basis what's happening because we're usually out of cell phone range. But on our trips up, we like to keep you informed so you know where the troop is at. In addition to this, the website has links to important sites, forums, and our calendar, which is set up every year. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. So, what does the troop do? Do we just get together on Tuesday nights at 7:30? Or is there more? Well, every June, the troop gets together and the boys set the calendar. As adults, we make sure and manage the time so there are weekends that are available for camping, but the boys decide what they'd like to do. We go ahead and publish all that in troop460.org/events. And each month has a theme. So maybe we're working on a merit badge or a particular skill. Maybe we just had crossovers and we're going to focus on those basic elements. All of that is spelled out in the events calendar, and you should look at it every week to know what's happening. Our troop meetings are there, and sometimes we'll put notes as to what's going on to give you a little more detail of what's happening. So, if we have all these activities, and we usually camp out every month during the school year, typically 8 campouts a year, not including summer camp, what do the boys need? Well, here's a basic list, but again, on troop460.org you'll find a complete list of suggestions. Sleeping bag, mess kit, rain gear, personal first aid kit. These are the 4 essentials, other than their uniform, which they must have Class A, and we'll talk about that a little later. All Scouts should pack their own gear. We don't want to hear, oh, Mom packed it for me. Why? They don't know what's in there. They don't know how to prepare. And remember, this is leadership training for them and training for life, so they should make sure all the things are there. But as a parent, you have some things to do too. Make sure they have a permission slip. Make sure you're paid up for their camping fees. And in addition to these, medical forms are important. Every year we require them, and for anything over 72 hours, those medical forms need to be signed by a qualified physician or medical professional. Now, in addition to all that, every campout, the patrols will cook. They may cook for themselves as individual scouters if we're doing an overnight camp pack out, or they may be cooking as a patrol for a group. And there's several merit badges that ask the boys to actually prepare a menu and set a table and cook for their fellow scouts. You'll see that the boys really get involved in what's going on. Typically the Tuesday, right before a camp out, you'll see them setting their menus. You'll also see the adults making sure that there are balanced meals. We don't want the boys having bacon every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So we'll be making sure that they have a balanced, nutritious meal at some point in the day. So if the boys are bringing all that, what does the troop bring? Well, we provide all the equipment. We bring tents, stoves, fuel for lanterns and stoves, charcoal. One of the things that we've been doing a lot lately is making sure the boys go back to basics in cooking. That means we're not going to cook on gas grills. We're going to actually cook over coal or maybe wood in Dutch ovens, foil packs, or a variety of other things. Remember, I said that the boys would learn how to cook, and boy do they learn some interesting recipes and get to enjoy the great outdoors that way. In addition to all that, the troop provides all the transportation, reservations, lodging that are necessary for a campout. Maybe we're going to a state park, or maybe we're going to a Boy Scout property. We coordinate, we plan, we make sure we have the vehicles necessary to get us there and all the proper paperwork and permits that are necessary. But let's say that we're going to do something additional, like go canoeing. Well, we're going to make sure there are canoes available, and if they're not, we'll make sure to transport them in. So, as you can see, the troop has a lot to do. And as parents, you may want to join some of the committees that actually put these things together, so you make sure that our troop and our scouts have the best time possible, not worrying about equipment or, hey, did someone actually make the reservation? So, let's talk about a camp out weekend. This is important because a lot of parents get confused as to what's supposed to happen. So, we meet between 5:30 and 6:30 at our church in front of our container. That's where we store all our gear. We say 5:30 because we want to pack our trailer. Our trailer gets packed depending on what our activity is with different equipment. So every camp out, we come in at 5:30 and pack that sucker up. Now, maybe you can't make it to 5:30. Well, we ask that every boy that's going on a camp out be there by 6:30 so we can verify paperwork and ensure that everything is set. Now, once our supplies are loaded in to our trailer, we double check permission slips and assign boys to the cars. We do some announcements and go car by car and make sure that every scout is where they're supposed to be, because we never want to leave a scout behind. So you will hear from the boys how often we check, how many boys are here. The SPL will get that request a lot. SPL, do a head count. Make sure everyone's here. They'll hear that a lot, and it makes sure that we're all together and we're all safe. So now we've driven out of the church, maybe an hour, 3 away, depends where we're going. We will reach our campsite, and typically the SPL will ask that all the boys remain in the cars while he goes out and checks the site. Where are we going to set up tents? We set up tents in a very clear manner. It's by patrols, with the adults on one side of the area and the scouts on another, because we want to keep that separation. Remember that youth protection training? It's in there. We need to be apart as adults, and that area is off limits to those boys. But it's also where we keep our first aid station and some additional supplies. So they are permitted to approach, but always have to ask permission before entering. Now each patrol gets its own area. That way they can set up their tent the way they want and set up their kitchens for their cooking the way they want. Now since we're doing a lot of charcoal cooking, we end up all being around the fire ring, but preparation and cleanup happens in their own areas. Then, once we're at that campsite and everyone has their tent up and it's the right time of day, it's lights out. We got a lot going on Saturday. Well, good Saturday morning. Wake up's around 7 a.m. unless we're doing something really intense, and maybe we'll get up a little earlier. We have flags. Remember I said uniforms? Every campout, a scout has to bring their Class A uniform, because every morning we will do a flag ceremony. That is where we set up our flags, say our oaths, say our allegiance, and then go into announcements. Once that's over, the boys can usually change out of that Class A and start breakfast. And again, each patrol does it according to their menu in their own cooking area. Once breakfast has been served and everyone is eaten, it's time for cleanup. Now, cleanup is individually. If you have your mess kit and it's dirty, you clean up your mess kit. But who set up the wash stations? You will notice that there's a duty roster, and that gets set up at the same time that the menus get set up. Each patrol will be assigned their time and duty of activity. Maybe it's set up the wash stations, maybe it's police a campsite, but every patrol has their responsibility and by their work make the whole outing a lot better. Once all that is done, and it's typically about 9 a.m., we start our planned activities. What are they? Maybe we're going canoeing, or maybe we're going hiking, or maybe we're going for a nature walk. Not sure, but around 9 a.m., that's when it all happens. Wow, that was a great hike through the woods. It's now Saturday evening, and maybe you remember from your civics class that a flag, an American flag, cannot stay out all night unless it has a light on it. But we said earlier, maybe you read it, that we don't have electricity, so how can a light stay on all night? Well, guess what? It can't. So the flags went up, they must come down. Once we do our flags and maybe some additional announcements, boys go out and they can prepare their dinner. Just as breakfast and lunch, patrols cook for themselves, unless it's a special occasion and maybe the adults are cooking. After they've prepared dinner and eaten, it's again cleanup. Let's make sure everything's put away. We don't know what critters are out there, so all the food gets packed away and stored in such a way that a raccoon or maybe something a little larger can't get to it. You wouldn't believe what some of those other campers can do with a very easily opened chest cooler. Well, now the cleanup is complete, what should we do? Well, let's have a campfire. Whenever we can, we bring the boys to the campfire and talk about their day. It's a great time to relax and warm up if it's cold out. We also look for some really good entertainment, so the boys will practice skits and actually entertain the troop. And we ask that every patrol come up with one. Sometimes they're good, sometimes there are a bunch of boys staring out into space going, we don't know what to do. So you'll find that sometimes the adults jump in and teach skits. Well, after that campfire, we're all kind of tired after that hike, so it's lights out, usually around 10 p.m. Again, this varies, but that's our norm for a regular campout. Well, good Sunday morning. Wake up depends on how far we have to drive. Sometimes it's 7 a.m., or if we're close by, maybe it's 10. But right after getting up, it's breakfast time. We ask the boys not to cook on a Sunday because usually we're in a hurry. So it's bagels, maybe toast, but ever popular Pop-Tarts work too. After breakfast, we do cleanup, but it's not just cleanup from breakfast, we do a general cleanup. And then it's packing up. Get those tents down, get your gear in place, start loading up the trailers and the vehicles. Once all that's done, we stop to take a moment to recognize that there are greater powers than us. We have our Scout Zone, because the Scout is always reverent. We can talk more about that if you'd like by coming up to one of the Scoutmasters or assistant Scoutmasters and ask them, what do you do for Scout Zone? After Scout Zone, it's time to head home. We always plan to arrive at the church no earlier than 1 p.m. My congregation is there till 12:30, and if we were to arrive with maybe 30 or 40 boys and their parents start pulling up, you could well imagine that the parking lot would be very crowded and very confusing, and there would be a lot of cars moving with a lot of boys running around, and that would be unsafe. So again, we plan to get there around 1 o'clock. If it's going to be a different time, we'll put it on our website through Twitter, and we always have the boys call home to make sure that mom or dad or a responsible adult is there waiting for them when we arrive. Well, it's 1 o'clock, we've gotten to the church, it's time to unload those trailers. We set personal gear aside, and then we take all of the troops' gear and equipment back into the container. Now, there's probably some food left over, so at this point what we do is have the patrols divvy it up. They did pay for it, usually about $15, so they should take it home. Anything that's not taken home is usually donated to another patrol, or it's disposed of properly. So, with all that going on a weekend, who pays for all of it? Well, every year we collect dues. That covers our basic paperwork to make sure that we are registered with BSA, with our council, and that our basic needs as far as equipment, registrations are all taken care of. In addition to dues, we do fundraising. Maybe it's popcorn sales, camp cards, car washes, anything else that you may think of. Remember that committee? Well, there's a fundraising part of that committee, or a fundraising subcommittee, that you could become a part of if you have some great ideas on how to raise money. The more money we raise as a troop, the greater a program we can have, because we can expose the boys to greater and greater experiences. Did you know this troop used to take 2 summer camps every year? One was the typical summer camp to one of the camp reservations. We'll talk about that in a minute. But another one was to a high adventure area, maybe Colorado or even Alaska, maybe Hawaii. We don't know. But it can only happen if we have enough funds, and fundraising is the key. Now, another way to make that money is through donations. Maybe it's individuals or sponsors. Maybe you know a company that is willing to sponsor scouts. Please come to the committee meeting and let us know. I did mention summer camp, didn't I? Well, here's the thing. We take a week, typically in June, second week after the boys are in school, and the week right after Cub Day Camp, to go north. Why? Let's face it, summertime in Florida is hot, so we want to go where it's cool. It also gives us a completely different environment. Maybe we're in mountains, rivers, streams. It's sometimes the first time a scout has left the state of Florida. and it's always a lot of fun. If you're a first-year scout, you want to go to that summer camp. Why? You can get 99% of all your requirements to first class. And here's the thing. When Baden Powell started scouting over 100 years ago, he said that a scout is not truly a scout until he's made first class. So we want to encourage those boys to make first class by their second summer camp. So that first summer camp is vitally important. Now, summer camp fees are separate from all other activity fees. It's not in the dues, it's not in the weekly payments that you may do for a camp out. This is completely separate, and in the beginning of the year, typically in January, we'll post what we think the cost is. It may change depending on how many boys we get, or maybe the cost of fuel, but we will transport the boys up to camp, we will make sure they're safe, and we'll make sure they have the best time possible. But it's not just about scouts. We need adults too, a minimum of 6, but we always shoot for around 10. Why? There are more adults. That means more people making sure the scouts are getting to where they need to be so they can take their merit badges and enjoy all the time that they have with us. So, we've talked about adults going to summer camp and some of the assistant scoutmasters and scoutmasters. So what happens with adults in camping? Well, we never want to have too few and never too many. It's a just right kind of thing. We'll never camp with fewer than 4 adults. We have done it sometimes with 3 when we're going to a particular spot and know that there's a 4th coming on the weekend, maybe a Saturday morning early. But if we only have 4 adults, we cannot meet the minimum requirements of coverage for the boys. Even though 1 adult for 10 is the ratio, remember that all-important youth protection, 2 deep leadership? Well, no scout can be alone with an adult, so we need at least 2. And if a boy becomes injured, that leaves 2 adults with an injured child, maybe going to urgent care, and 2 adults with the rest of the troop. If we have less than that, there goes the weekend. That's why we like to have closer to 6, to make sure we have more give and take when it is to oversight. Now, we don't want to take too many. If it gets too big, it becomes a Weebless 3 camp out, and that isn't good for the boys, and it's certainly not good for the adults. So, the boys are in charge, they're taking care of things. We need just the right number of adults to make sure that everything is being done according to BSA rules. So obviously some of those adults are parents, Can they go camping too? We encourage parents to get involved. I've been saying all along about being part of the committee, or maybe getting training to be an assistant scoutmaster. You just have to make sure you have the right training, always with youth protection, and always remember that as an adult, you can provide a lot to the scouts. Maybe you're going to teach a merit badge. Maybe you're just an involved parent that has certain skills. Maybe it's fishing, and you want to teach the fishing merit badge. And that's what we're doing this weekend. Well, come along, teach the merit badge. Now, one thing is very important. Mom and dad do not go camping. These are mythical creatures on a campout. A boy will yell dad or mom, and a whole bunch of adults say, "Excuse me, I don't know that name." Why? Because we're teaching the boys respect, and we're teaching them that we're all there for them. So remember, you may have gone because your scout is on that campout and you're worried about him. But when you're there, the scoutmaster is going to make sure that you're there for the entire troop. You're not just there for your child. So, dad? What dad? There's no dad here. Who do you mean? And speaking of dad, what about mom? Does she really have to go? Well, guess what? Yes, she does. Women are involved in the program just as men. I mentioned earlier Scoutmaster is he. Well, guess what? There are a lot of troops out there that have women as a Scoutmaster, and they're very successful. Now, when we do have a mixed environment with women and men, we have to make sure the facilities are up to par for that. That means separate bathrooms and separate showers when possible, or at the very least we take turns. We will sometimes take a sign that says women only, men only, and certainly adult or scout. Now, it goes beyond just showers and bathrooms. We have to make sure that there are sleeping arrangements. Men with men, women with women. Now, sometimes we vary that rule, especially when we're in a hotel overnight. Maybe we're taking a long drive somewhere. But the general rule stands that men will sleep with men in tents and women will sleep with women in tents. So, enough about mom and dad. What are we really here to talk about? Boys ranking up. Boys getting up to Eagle, right? Well, what do they have to do to get those ranks? As I said earlier, rank up to first class can be done at summer camp. That's because they're focused on basic skills. Do you know how to use a knife? Do you know what to do with first aid? The scout book will give you everything you need to know for your scout to make it to first class. So maybe they didn't go to summer camp. Not a loss. It's all in the book, and the troop will make sure your scout gets what he needs to make it to first class. Beyond first class, Star, Life, and Eagle, We focus on leadership. You'll see advanced skills like the First Aid Merit Badge, for example, and other merit badges that teach the boys a lot about leadership and teach them life skills. Did you know that we have classes on salesmanship? Do you know that an Eagle required merit badge is to know how to swim? All of these things are in the Scout book, and we encourage you to read them. Now, as part of all of these things is community service, because a Scout gives back. So you'll see requirements for how many hours a Scout has to do as part of personal management service or troop service or any other community service activity. And so how do they get that rank? Well, obviously the boys have to complete the requirements. But once they've completed those requirements, they need to go talk to a Scoutmaster, be it the Scoutmaster or Assistant Scoutmaster, and request a Scoutmaster's Conference. That's where we go through and review the Scout skills. Do you actually know how to tie that knot? Do you know how to take care of someone if they're burned? We make sure. And then once we're comfortable with you as a Scout, we'll go through and talk about your strengths and your weaknesses and how you can make it better and how you can make the troop better. That's what a Scoutmaster's Conference is about. Now, a Scout, not a parent, must request that Scoutmaster's Conference. So don't be surprised if sometimes a couple of weeks go by and your child hasn't had one. Why? Did they really ask? And please don't ask the same day that you want it. Usually give us a week. Maybe you're lucky. Maybe there's not too much going on. And Scoutmaster will say, sure, we can have a Scoutmaster's Conference right now. But typically, it's a week. Now, once the Scoutmaster's Conference is complete, the Scoutmaster says, congratulations to the boy, and says, now it's time for your Board of Review. What's the Board of Review? Well, this is where the committee gets to talk to the Scout. They get to know and understand what kind of boy we have here and what his role will be, not only in the future of the troop, but as an adult in the future of our country. So the committee will ask him a lot of questions. They're not trick questions, and they typically don't ask him about knots, but you would hear things like, hey, what was your favorite merit badge? Or on the last campout, what did you find the hardest thing to do? The Scouts must request that conference from a committee member, and we usually have one or two that are assigned. Who are they? Well, it varies over the year, so the Scout will be told by the Scoutmaster who they should go talk to. And now, once the Board of Review is complete and the board feels the Scout has passed, they will congratulate him, shake his hand, and say, congratulations, you've earned your rank. Now, because of the way things work, they have the rank from that moment forward, but they may not have the insignia. That will come at a court of honor, and I'll talk about a court of honor a little later. Well, badges. It's all about those badges, right? Do we really need those badges? Yes, we do. Once a boy gets to first class, he must earn merit badges to advance, although he can get merit badges at any point once he is a Scout rank. That is the very first rank that a Scout gets entering a troop. So, that is going on from day one. Hey, I'm going to take first aid. That's a great one to have. That's even an Eagle required one. So, we start with first aid. Maybe we go to swimming. Maybe learn basketry. All these other things that will help a boy shape who they are in the future is all available through merit badges. Now, sometimes we do them individually. Maybe a Scout will come up and say, hey, I want to do gardening. Great. Scoutmaster will approve it. Scoutmaster must approve all merit badges. Or maybe we do it as a troop. Maybe we've decided that we're going to do the swimming badge as a troop and we're going to go to some springs. Well, the counselor comes along and teaches the class at the campout. Remember how I said parents can come on campouts because maybe you're teaching a merit badge? Here's one of those examples. And there are other ways to get merit badges. We've talked about it happening at summer camp. That's actually where boys go to 6, maybe 7 classes a day and earn 6 to 7 merit badges. Sometimes they earn the full merit badge at camp. Sometimes they're partials because they have to do some things with the troop or at home. In any case, great way to earn badges. Also, the council sets up merit badge college days where maybe it's a weekend, 2 to 3 days, where the boys will go and actually participate in classes as they would in summer camp. We discourage some merit badges in those weekends because there isn't quite enough time for some of the more advanced ones, but certainly a lot of merit badges can be earned during those merit badge college days. So is that it? Rank and merit badges? No, there's a lot more to scouting, and we encourage you to research more. 2 areas that you can think about are the Order of the Arrow and venturing. Order of the Arrow is the Scouts Honor Society. They're really into bringing the boys into a place where they can think about all the activities and community service they can be involved in. Now, usually it's a boy that's at least first class and 14 years old, and the troop must elect them into the Order of the Arrow. They can't just show up at the lodge and say, hey, I'd like to join. Venturing is our co-ed high adventure group. That's where boys that are 14 and older and girls that are 14 and older can experience the high adventure of scouting. Maybe it's hiking, maybe it's rock climbing, maybe it's getting on some horses and going horseback riding. Venturing is one of those great areas that Boy Scouts of America has created and helps with the future growth of our kids. So, meetings and more meetings. Guess what? The troop meets every Tuesday at 7:30 to 9 p.m., except when it's a PLC. The PLC meeting is really for leadership to decide what's going on in the next campout and what went right or wrong in the previous campout. We also discuss what has to happen with one patrol or another. Maybe we have a situation between two scouts and we have to separate them. Or maybe we have a patrol that's grown too large and we need to create two patrols. That's the place it happens. All boys are invited, but the focus is really on doing the leadership role. Now, every troop meeting is Class A. Scouts are expected to be in their uniforms, except at PLC. At that, we are usually in Class B. Or maybe there's a special occasion where we're asked for Class A, but those are the norms. Beyond that, we have a committee meeting. Right now, they're on the fourth Monday of every month, typically from 7:30 to 9 p.m., although we sometimes have them earlier if our agenda is longer, or we may change the day depending on some conditions. Court of Honor, I mentioned that earlier. There's a little bit more coming up on that one. And no schools, no meeting? That's usually the case. So if Tuesday's a holiday, we typically don't meet. Why? It's a holiday from school, so the boys should be enjoying themselves. Or maybe it's a family vacation time across the end of year break from school, or maybe spring break. So the norm is no school, no meetings. Although some troops will meet during the summer and have a lot of activities. Troop 460 tends to have limited activities in the summer to give families as much time as possible to enjoy the great outdoors together as a family. So I told you it was coming. Here's Court of Honor. That's when we take our time to honor the Scouts for their achievement. We have 3 a year, late summer, fall, and spring, and that's where the boys get their insignia and all their merit badges so they can put them on their sash. Don't know what a sash looks like? Just hold on, it'll be on the next slide. We usually have those on Tuesday at 7 p.m. instead of 7:30, but it can change based on the PLC's wishes. Now, what we usually do there is a potluck dinner. Every family is expected to bring enough for themselves and a few more people, and they're asked to bring their own utensils. Please, bring your own utensils and cups. We've had way too many times when someone shows up with food but says, ooh, I have nothing to eat it with. And we usually have some additional supplies, and the Scoutmasters are usually there with some extra stuff just in case. But bring your own stuff, please. Each patrol is assigned a particular part of the menu. Maybe it's drinks, a main course, or desserts. Your boys will know, and if they don't know, don't worry. You'll get a message, either an email or on the Facebook page, that what's going on. And again, bring your own utensils and plates. So, a word about uniform. Troop 460 adheres to BSA uniform code. That means no non-BSA clothing permitted. You will wear a Class B t-shirt. Class B t-shirts are t-shirts that are BSA certified with BSA insignia. Maybe they're a troop shirt, maybe they're a camp shirt, maybe they're even a Cub Scout shirt, but it must be a BSA shirt. And you must wear the Class A khaki, as in this picture here. And on special occasions, we'll have a sash. Oh, that scout is really good. Look at all those merit badges. And we really like it when our scouts wear those sashes, especially for Court of Honor and when we do special activities with the troop, say for Memorial Day with the city of Pembroke Pines when we're one of the many flag and color guards. So, Class A, every meeting except PLC where they can wear Class B. Class A for every camp out. They will do flags. Class A a must for summer camp. When we get together for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, we must wear Class A's. So, we've spent about half an hour talking. So is 460 good for you? We'll find out. Every family has to choose a troop based on their needs. Maybe you can't meet on Tuesdays. Maybe you need someone that meets on Thursdays. There are many troops out there, and we encourage families to explore the possibility. We focus on the boy. We make sure that they have the best experience possible, and we push hard for advancement, but we always make it as fun as possible. You'll see that we've had a lot of Eagle Scouts in our troop. In the last 8 years, we've had over 22 Eagle Scouts come from Troop 460. So we do focus on that, but it's all about fun. Thanks for spending this time with us, and I hope you will make 460 part of your future. And if not, please make sure to keep scouting in your future. Your boy will be a much better leader in our world of tomorrow if they do. Thank you.